The house had learned how to breathe quietly. At night, it settled into itself with the patience of something that had seen too much grief to make noise anymore. The walls carried the memory of laughter they no longer echoed, and the floors creaked only when necessary, as if even the wood understood restraint. Alara often thought the house mirrored her, contained, careful, holding everything just beneath the surface. She stood at the top of the staircase, fingers resting lightly on the banister, listening. Daniel was in the kitchen below. She could tell by the rhythm of movement, the soft clink of ceramic, the pause between steps, the slow exhale he never realized he made when he was alone. He moved like a man who had learned not to expect anyone to answer when he spoke. The light from the kitchen spilled into the hallway in a muted gold, stopping just short of where she stood. Alara did not step into it. She never did right away. There was something about that threshold, darkness to light, that made her heart tighten in a way she did not name. 3 years had passed since her mother's death. Long enough for condolences to stop. Long enough for casseroles to disappear. Long enough for the world to assume healing had occurred. Inside the house, healing was quieter. Daniel had become careful with everything. His voice, his posture, the way he knocked on Alara's door even though it was his house. He carried grief like an object that might cut someone if handled too roughly. Alara watched him from corners and doorways, studying the weight of it on his shoulders, the way it bent him slightly forward, like a man bracing against invisible weather. She told herself that what she felt was empathy. Gratitude. A complicated attachment formed through shared loss. She told herself many things. Her room was still half lit behind her, the silver circle resting on her desk where she had left it earlier. A thin ring, cool and plain, no gemstone, no engraving. She had found it in an antique store months ago and bought it without thinking, as if something had reached out and claimed her through glass. She wore it on a chain beneath her shirt. The secret circle, she called it silently. A boundary. A reminder. Something closed, unbroken, containing what must never be released. Alara. Daniel's voice floated up the stairs, gentle, hesitant. He never raised it. Her name landed in her chest with a soft impact. I'm here, she said, after a beat. Always after a beat. As if responding too quickly might reveal something. She stepped into the light. Daniel stood by the counter, sleeves rolled, hair slightly disheveled in a way that spoke of distraction rather than effort. He looked up and smiled, small, tired, genuine. The kind of smile that asked for nothing. There's soup, he said. If you're hungry. I am, she replied, though hunger was rarely the reason her chest felt hollow. She took the seat across from him at the table. They ate in silence, the kind that wasn't awkward, just full. Loaded with things unsaid. Alara watched the way his hands moved, steady but worn, the faint scar across his knuckle she had never asked about. She noticed everything. That was the problem. Daniel glanced up once, meeting her eyes briefly before looking away, as if holding her gaze too long might disturb something fragile. The moment passed, but it left a residue, a warmth that spread where it shouldn't have. Her fingers curled unconsciously around the chain beneath her collar. The secret circle pressed cool against her skin, grounding her. Closing something in. Later, as dishes dried and lights dimmed, Alara lingered in the doorway while Daniel checked the locks. Their paths crossed in the narrow hall, close enough that she caught the faint scent of soap and something deeper, fatigue, maybe, or memory. Good night, he said. Good night, she echoed. For a fraction of a second, neither moved. In that suspended space, Alara felt everything rise, affection twisted with longing, safety tangled with something dangerous. Her throat tightened, words pressing upward, unformed but heavy. She said nothing. Daniel nodded once and turned away. Alara stood alone as his footsteps faded, her hand closing around the silver circle like a promise and a warning all at once. The house exhaled, and somewhere inside her, something remained awake. Morning arrived gently, as if the house had negotiated with the sun to keep its distance. Pale light slid across the hallway, stopping at doorframes, lingering like a question that didn't demand an answer. Alara woke before her alarm, the way she often did now, heart already alert, mind already crowded. She lay still, listening. Daniel's presence moved through the house before she ever saw him. A cupboard opening. The low hum of the kettle. The subtle rhythm of someone trying not to wake another person, even when there was no real need for such care. That consideration, quiet, constant, pressed against her chest harder than anything loud ever could. She rose slowly, fingers brushing the silver circle on the chain at her throat before she even stood. The metal was cool, familiar. Containing. In the bathroom mirror, she studied her reflection with a seriousness that felt older than her years. There was nothing dramatic about her face this morning, no visible fracture, no sign of the war quietly unfolding beneath her skin. Just tired eyes. Just restraint. Downstairs, Daniel stood by the window, coffee untouched, staring into the small backyard where winter had stripped everything down to its bones. He turned when he heard her steps, offering that same gentle smile, the one that carried history without explanation. Morning, he said. Morning. They moved around each other with an ease that had taken years to form, shared space negotiated without words. Alara reached for a mug, Daniel slid it closer. Their fingers did not touch. They never did. The space between them felt deliberate, like an invisible rule both understood instinctively. They sat at opposite ends of the table, the distance both comforting and cruel. Alara watched him over the rim of her cup, the way his gaze drifted sometimes, unfocused, as though he were listening to something far away. Grief had made him quieter, but it had also made him deeper, more careful with the world. She wondered if he ever noticed how she watched him. The thought unsettled her enough that she looked away, eyes catching the faint reflection of light on the chain beneath her collar. Her fingers tightened briefly around it. The circle reminded her to breathe. Later, the house filled with afternoon stillness, the kind that stretched time thin. Alara sat on the living room floor with a book she wasn't reading, pages turned without meaning. Daniel was nearby, fixing a loose hinge on the cabinet, the soft metallic click echoing gently. Every sound felt amplified, every pause heavier than it should have been. She found herself memorizing him without intention, the crease between his brows when the screw resisted, the slow exhale when it finally gave. These details settled into her like sediment, quiet but permanent. Alara, he said suddenly, not looking at her. Do you ever think about leaving? I mean, moving out someday. The question landed without warning. Her heart reacted before her mind did, a sharp pull inward, like something being threatened. She kept her voice steady. Sometimes. He nodded, absorbing that. You should, he added after a moment. You deserve your own space. Your own life. The words were kind. Responsible. Right. They still hurt. She nodded in return, unable to trust her voice. The secret circle felt heavier against her skin, as if responding to the shift inside her. This was what it was for, to remind her of the line she must not even approach. That evening, rain arrived quietly, tapping against the windows with a persistence that mirrored her thoughts. The lights were low, shadows pooling in familiar corners. Daniel sat on the couch, reading, glasses perched low on his nose. Alara hesitated in the doorway before joining him, choosing the far end of the couch, leaving space. Like a buffer. The television murmured softly, something forgettable playing in the background. Neither of them paid it much attention. A particularly loud clap of thunder startled her, just enough that she flinched. Daniel looked over instinctively. You okay? He asked. Yes, she said quickly, then softer, just surprised. He nodded, eyes lingering a fraction longer than usual, concern flickering openly across his face. In that moment, Alara felt something inside her tilt dangerously, gratitude morphing into something warmer, something that reached too far. Her hand moved unconsciously to the chain again. The secret circle grounded her, closing the feeling in on itself, compressing it until it hurt less. Or maybe until she hurt more quietly. They sat there as the rain continued, the air thick with unspoken things. Alara felt the urge to speak, to say something honest, something small, but fear held her still. Silence had become safer than truth. When the rain finally softened, Daniel stood. I'm turning in, he said. Don't stay up too late. I won't. He paused, as if considering something else, then nodded and walked away. Alara remained on the couch long after the house settled again, staring at the dark window where her reflection barely showed. She closed her fingers around the silver circle and whispered a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Some feelings, she told herself, were meant to remain unspoken. Even if they changed everything. The house changed when night arrived, not in shape but in sensation. Darkness pressed closer to the walls, thickened the air, softened edges. Alara felt it most in the hours after dinner, when time slowed enough for thoughts to grow loud. She sat at the dining table, a single lamp lit above her, the rest of the house submerged in shadow. Her notebook lay open, pages filled with half-formed sentences and abandoned ideas. She had started writing again recently, not stories exactly, more like controlled releases, places where feelings could exist without consequence. Or so she told herself. From where she sat, she could hear Daniel upstairs, moving from room to room with the same careful quiet that had become second nature to him. Each sound drew her attention upward, her focus tightening like a held breath. She closed the notebook. Tonight felt fragile, charged. As if something had been quietly shifting all day, aligning itself without permission. She stood and walked toward the staircase, stopping halfway up, fingers brushing the wall. The silver circle rested against her chest, warm now from her skin. She pressed it between her thumb and forefinger, feeling its smoothness, its refusal to open. A boundary. A reminder. A promise. Daniel's bedroom door was open. Light spilled into the hallway, low and amber. He stood inside, folding laundry with deliberate care, movements unhurried. He looked up when he sensed her presence. "Alara," he said, surprised but not displeased. "Everything okay?" "Yes," she replied, though the word felt inadequate. She hovered at the doorway, not crossing the threshold. "I just couldn't sleep." He nodded, setting the folded clothes aside. "Me neither, sometimes." Silence settled between them, heavier than before. This was different from their usual quiet. This silence listened back. Alara noticed how close she was standing now, close enough to see the faint lines at the corners of his eyes, the evidence of years lived seriously. She felt the pull again, dangerous, magnetic, not toward him physically, but toward what he represented. Stability. Understanding. The absence of chaos. Her hand tightened around the chain. Daniel shifted his weight slightly, as if aware of something unbalanced in the room. "Do you want some tea?" he offered. An exit. A kindness. She shook her head. "No, I just wanted to say goodnight." His expression softened. "Good night, then." But neither moved. The moment stretched, fragile as glass. Alara's thoughts raced, colliding with one another. Say something. Don't say anything. Leave. Stay. The secret circle pressed into her skin, grounding and accusing all at once. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you," Daniel said gently, breaking the tension without knowing he was cutting into it. "Are you happy here?" The question startled her. Happy. The word echoed, hollow and complicated. She searched his face for expectation, for pressure, and found only concern. "I'm okay," she said finally. He studied her, not intrusively, but with the attention of someone who wanted to understand and didn't know how. "You don't have to pretend with me," he said quietly. The words struck deeper than she expected. Something inside her shifted, a hairline crack spreading slowly. She felt heat behind her eyes, forced herself to breathe. This was the danger of kindness. It invited honesty. Her fingers closed fully around the silver circle. "I know," she said. Her voice was steady, but only because she willed it to be. "I just don't always know how to explain things." Daniel nodded, as if that made sense. "You don't owe me explanations," he replied. "I just want you to feel safe." Safe. The word unraveled her. For a moment, she almost spoke. Almost let something slip, not the whole truth, never that, but a fragment. A confession shaped like gratitude. Like dependence. Like something that could still be misunderstood but would finally be shared. Her lips parted. Then she stopped. The secret circle burned cold against her skin, a warning disguised as comfort. She imagined what would happen if she crossed that line, how the house would change, how his kindness might harden into distance, how silence would no longer protect them. "I should go," she said suddenly. Daniel looked surprised, but he didn't question her. "Of course." She turned away quickly, heart pounding, each step down the stairs an act of restraint. She didn't look back. She couldn't. In her room, she closed the door softly and leaned against it, breath shallow. The quiet here was different, denser, filled with everything she had not said. She slipped the chain from her neck and held the circle in her palm, staring at it as if it might speak. "You're doing the right thing," she whispered, though doubt crept through the words. Downstairs, a door closed. Footsteps faded. The house settled again, but something had changed. The silence no longer felt neutral. It felt expectant. Alara lay awake long after the lights were off, replaying the moment in the doorway over and over, wondering how close she had come to undoing everything. Some confessions, she realized, didn't need words to exist. They lived in pauses. In questions asked too gently. In answers withheld just in time. And in the fragile space between what was felt and what must never be spoken.